For the conversation bit, there's no reason for Twitter themselves to have the data, just the people you're trying to have a conversation with. And okay, my second thesis here is that the crypto war that we were talking about in the beginning was largely about this idea of data freedom, right? That there are people who had data, they wanted to share it, and there are other people who were trying to prevent you from sharing that information. And it was easy from that moment to extrapolate a future of data control, to assume that the entire future was going to continue along these lines of people trying to control the data that you have. And so a lot of the privacy and anonymity projects that we have today were born out of that reality of imagining this future of data control. And so we got things like darknets, data havens, hidden services. Out of curiosity, does anybody here use these things? Darknets, data havens? 2 people? 3? 4? So a couple of people, right? But they're not extremely popular. And I think that's because that's not really the future that we got. We didn't get this world of increasing data control. We got this other thing, the cell phone world, the Google world, the Facebook world. And another thing that I've noticed is that a lot of privacy advocates are really in love with the other. These are people like Iranian dissidents and Chinese dissidents. But I think what's interesting is that if you look at what Iranian dissidents are doing, they don't really have that much in common with privacy advocates. And that I think that the reason that privacy advocates are so in touch with these people in foreign places is that these are the few places in the world that are still speaking that language of data control, that they're still speaking this language of trying to control information. But I think that even those places are beginning to realize that that is not necessarily the most effective strategy. I mean, Iran recently announced that they wanted to launch a national email service. Like free email, no limit, unlimited storage, right? And I think that even they realize that the Google model is actually much more effective. That if you start by soliciting rather than demanding information, then it's a much more insidious way to get it, and that in the end it will be much more effective. I also think that the loss of the crypto war was not so much about giving up for the eavesdroppers as it was about changing strategies. The big strategy shift that I've seen is the change from key escrow to key disclosure. And we see that in things like the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Act, or RIPA, that have been popping up in the UK and similar laws in other parts of Europe. And what this law essentially says is anybody can use cryptography, right? We're not going to try and regulate that because that's a hard problem. That's one of these data control problems, and we've seen that doesn't work very well. Instead, what we're going to say is anybody can use cryptography, but then if we ever want to see any of this encrypted traffic, we come to you and we ask for your key. And if you don't give it to us, then we put you in jail. And so this is a problem of key disclosure. And I think that we're suffering from this problem because a lot of the secure protocols that we're using today were not designed with forward security, that they weren't designed with this problem in mind. So again, when I'm thinking about the future and things that I am interested in working on and that I think might be important, the first thing I want to do is deal with these choices that aren't really choices. I want to reject these false choices. The second is I want to worry a little bit less about information freedom. And the third is that I want to worry a lot more about this forward security problem. There's this very nice paper that was written, I think, in 2002 or 2004 called Off the Record Communication, or Why Not to Use PGP. It was written by Nikita Borisov, Ian Goldberg, and Eric Brewer. And they make a few very simple observations. First, they look at the PGP model. And I'm sure people are familiar with this. If you have an email that you would like to send Bob, you get Bob's public key, and you encrypt your email with Bob's public key, and you send it to Bob. The next time you want to send an email to Bob, you do the same thing. The third time, the same thing. This can continue over a period of 20 years. But the problem is that now, if at any point in the future Bob's key is compromised, then all of your previous traffic is compromised as well. It was all encrypted using the same key, so that someone could just record 20 years, a year, a month, a day of encrypted traffic, and then if they ever manage to get that key, they can go back and record all of the, go back and decrypt all of the recorded traffic. So the big problem is one key compromise affects all previous correspondence. There's this other weird thing where the secrecy of what I write is dependent on your security practices, right? I'm a paranoid person. I feel like I have sane security practices, but I don't know about the person that I'm writing to. And so it's this strange thing where really you'd like for the security of what you write to be dependent on your security practices. And the third is that the PGP model gives you authenticity, but it doesn't give you deniability. So, right, if I sign the encrypted message to Bob that it says, yeah, I was thinking that Eve is a real jerk, now Bob knows it came from me, but if that message is then compromised and decrypted in the future, there's no way for me to deny that I wrote it. It definitely came from me. It has my digital signature on it. It's undeniable. And so the OTR model is a little bit different. You still have a key pair, but this time your keys are only used to sign ephemeral session keys. They're never used to encrypt anything. And each time you send a message to the person you're communicating with, it also includes 1/2 of a new key exchange. So each time you exchange messages, you're completing a key exchange, and the key material that you're using is constantly rolling forward, and the old key material is discarded. So now, if any time in the future someone records your traffic and then comes to you and tries to get your key, even if they can get something off of your computer, they don't have the keys for all of your previous correspondence, and so all of that stuff is still safe. Additionally, you have messages that are encrypted with your session key, and this time, instead of authenticating them with a signature, you use what's known as a message authentication code. And that key is derivative from the session key. So while signatures are undeniable because they have only one possible author, MACs are immediately sort of deniable because they have two possible authors, right? Because two people know the session key, you and the person you're communicating with. So if the person you're communicating with says, Moxie wrote this, it's just as likely that actually they wrote it as I did. Additionally, since this key material is constantly rolling forward, that means that the old MACs are rolling forward as well, which means that as soon as you're done with whatever key that you're on, you can publish the old MAC keys, and now anybody can forge previous messages. So you get this authenticity, but also this strong notion of deniability, because anybody could have written this thing that they say that they have. So anyway, I think that this model is going to become more and more important in the future, and that we need to start thinking about this in all secure protocols as we move forward. Along those lines, I've started a project called Whisper Systems. And the idea is that I want to try and bring forward secure protocols into mobile devices. And so here again, I feel like I'm trying to combine these two things, right? Mobile devices are this place where we're dealing with these false choices. And then I also want to bring this forward security problem into that place. And so along those lines, we have two applications available for free right now. One is called Redphone, and it's an encrypted voice application for Android. The way it works is just like the normal dialer in Android. It functions totally transparently, and it uses VoIP. So there's this problem though, right, where like VoIP tends to suck. It just never really seems to work very well. And particularly in the mobile environment, it seems to be really flaky. And so, looking at that and thinking about, well, why is this always so flaky? To me, it seems to come down to the signaling question. That normally, the way it works is you have some asterisk PBX or some other PBX sitting on the internet, and you do something like SIP. You have some SIP connection to this PBX, and that signals for call setups and teardowns. And the problem is that in the mobile environment, that doesn't really work very well, because now your mobile phone has to maintain a constant TCP connection or keep alive a UDP connection to this signaling server. And in the mobile environment, you're dealing with not necessarily very reliable network connectivity. You're switching between networks. And then if you are maintaining this connection, your phone has to stay on all the time, which means that the battery life isn't very good. And so it just doesn't seem like a very good fit. And so in thinking about it, we realized that the mobile environment actually has an entire signaling infrastructure that was already built by the telecoms. And so what we want to do is, in taking VoIP into the mobile environment, we want to leverage the existing signaling infrastructure. And so actually we just use SMS to signal for call setups and teardowns. So the advantages of this is that your phone doesn't need to maintain some constant network connection to a server, which means your phone can go to sleep and not be active. And the second is you don't need the equivalent of a Skype ID or a SIP account or something like that. All of the addressing is based on your normal phone number, since that's how SIP addresses devices. So if you know someone's phone number, you know how to call them using Redphone. And the last thing is you don't need to run some kind of VoIP server or set up a VoIP account or something like that. You just install this app, and now you're ready to go. So then the question is, okay, how do we get security out of this VoIP connection? And so most VoIP uses RTP, the real-time protocol for transmitting voice. And so what we do is we use ZRTP, which is Philip Zimmerman's extension to RTP. And ZRTP is a pretty nice protocol. The way it works is you negotiate an ephemeral session key for each call. And then from that ephemeral session key, you derive what's known as a short authentication string. And that is just 2 words that appear at the bottom of the in-call screen, flatfoot Eskimo in this case. And so to verify the authenticity of your call, once it's set up, you just read the 2 words over the phone to the other person. And if they have the same 2 words, then you know that the call is authentic. There's no certificates, there's no certificate authorities, there's no fingerprints, there's no signatures, there's no web of trust, there's none of that crap. You just read these 2 words to each other, and you know that you have a secure call. And also, the 2 words are always strangely prophetic. Or, you know, it's like a little haiku. You know, like something will happen, you'll be like, flatfoot Eskimo. Yeah, that's how I feel today. So it's kind of fun. And the other application that we have is called TechSecure. It's a secure text messaging application with a protocol that is derivative of OTR, this thing that we've been talking about. And it works just like your normal text messaging application. You can use it to text people that aren't running TechSecure. Everything is identical to the stock Android text messaging application. And once again, every time you exchange messages with someone that is running TechSecure, the key material is constantly rolling forward. So we get this forward security property of even if someone is to record all of your SMS traffic and then somehow later seize your device, they won't be able to decrypt those previous SMS messages. So anyway, these projects are just some small hope that I have that we can work on things to help reduce the scope of these choices that we are increasingly faced with. They're all available for free online. Please download them, try them, check them out, talk about them, let us know what you think. Thank you. Question?
For the red phone application, it seems like you're relying on the voice pattern of the other person to know that you're actually talking to them. Am I right on that? Is there anything you can do to make that better?
Sure. The question is, for a red phone, it seems like you're relying on the voice of the person that you're communicating with to know that you're actually talking with them. And yeah, that's true. You have to know the person you're calling in order to authenticate them. Yeah. Yeah. Question is, are there plans to move the red phone to iPhone? Yes, we would like to support other mobile devices. The problem is that, of course, dealing with Apple is kind of a drag, and that I have a feeling that they wouldn't allow this in the App Store because it is VoIP. But we'll see.
When did you start both the WhisperSys and mobile sharing, and how many usage do you have on the end?
So the question is, when did we start Whisper Systems and Google Sharing? Google Sharing, I think, is about 6 months old. Whisper Systems, I think, is about 2 months old. Google Sharing has like 80,000 users. Whisper Systems, we have like a couple thousand users that are using Red Phone. Sure. The question is, how do you deal with NAT traversal in the mobile environment? And we run what's known as a turn server. Basically just relays traffic. So it just passes back and forth opaque encrypted packets. And it's actually pretty low bandwidth just because the voice streams are encoded using a codec. So it's fine. Yeah. The question is there a way to transmit false GPS information from Android phones? Actually, I was talking to someone last night who has this whole plan for doing that, but